everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah, Pearls of Wisdom and Food. It's Carnivore Month, and we've got Elaine here. We're going to do a little interview. We just met. I mean, this is like a match.com just met. So, and so we're just going to dive on in. Elaine, I think, Elaine was the first female to email me about wanting to be on. And she's lying about her age, I'll tell you that much. She came by way of Richard, the keto mechanic, and Carnivore Nation Original. He's got a couple of Facebook pages. And so she's on his good list. And so he put out the siren call for people for here, and she showed up, and so here we are. We're just going to dive in and do it. So welcome, Elaine.
Thank you, Sarah. Glad to be here.
So let's just start. Tell me all the stats that you want to give up, girl.
Well, I'm a 56-year-old female, and I have been on a journey of health for a good solid 8 years after having gained a huge amount of weight over my lifetime, and I'm doing real well. I am a type 2 diabetic who has not had to take medication for close to 8 years because of these food choices. And I've done everything from I started with low carb, and then I moved into keto and did that for a number of years, and then added in some fasting, starting intermittently and then doing extended fasting earlier this year. And in the summer, I started a carnivore plan. Dr. Ken Berry, who I had met on a low carb cruise in this last May, and he had done a talk on the cruise, and he did mention that he had done a carnivore diet himself and how well he had done with it and how much it seemed to work for him. And some of it, he said, depends on your genetics, how well you do. And so I approached him on the ship, and I said, Dr. Berry, then I was 55. I said, I'm 55. I'm a type 2 diabetic. My ancestry is Scottish, and I'm in menopause right now. Would carnivore do well for me? And he said, I think it would. So I decided on June 1st to try a 30-day experiment where I was just going to eat one meal a day and make it carnivore. And with all the fasting I had done prior to that, and especially the extended fasting, which though it is in a very effective way to do a lot of things, it was difficult. I like food. I like looking forward to food, and choosing to do one meal a day meant that I got to look forward to food every single day. And I started the carnivore thing weighing 202 pounds after the cruise. And today I think I'm about 167 pounds.
Wow.
It's been the easiest part of all of these things I've done for 8 years, to be honest. And when I eat big. I do not eat some little tiny filet mignon that's all lean and 4 ounces. I eat big. I eat at least a pound of either ground beef or a ribeye steak or a lot of chicken with all the fat and the skin and everything. And I eat till I'm nice and full, and then I don't eat again until the next day. And it has been so easy. I actually had the pleasure of getting to see Dr. Berry again and his wife, Nisha. I'll back up just a tiny bit. I'm a keyboard player on the show, the national tour of Phantom of the Opera. That's my job. And we played Nashville about 6 weeks ago, and I got to meet Dr. Berry and his wife. They came to see the show, and we went and had dinner at a wonderful steakhouse, which is perfect for all of us. And we had a great chat, and I thanked him for encouraging me to try carnivore. And I said, you know, many years ago, my daddy had said that when he said they were all difficult, all the different types of math, you know, algebra, trigonometry, geometry, statistics, all those things were difficult until he got to calculus. And he said, calculus all of a sudden made all the other maths make sense. And I said to Dr. Berry, that's how I feel about carnivore. It's like made all these other choices, low carb, keto, fasting, make sense to me. So this is sort of, carnivore is like my calculus to my daddy.
Well, that's really a sweet story. And Dr. Berry and Nisha, not just once, but twice, and you went out to eat with it. Was it Ruth Chris's by any chance?
We went to Morton and had a fabulous steak.
Yeah, because I went to Nashville, and that's where I went to eat. You said that because I've never been before or since. So you went.
Oh, nice.
It was fabulous.
Was wonderful, and I got to have a wonderful visit with them, and they saw the show, and then I gave them a little tour our backstage, which is a lot of fun. If you've just seen the show, you get to actually go backstage and look at the sets up close, and the costumes and the wigs, and see what it takes to make this big show do its thing. And I'll have to say that I have done all of this while I've traveled. All of this food, all of these choices. I've actually been a touring musician since 2002. And I started doing the life changes in food around the early part of 2010. And when people say, oh, well, I can't do this, I can't diet because I'm going to be traveling or I'm going to be out of my house or whatever, I say, that's just an excuse.
It sure is. You can tell them that.
Yep,
yeah.
I've done it. I have done it. And I have gone from a high of 272 pounds. So I have lost about 105 pounds right now. And I just had my A1C checked a week and a half ago. I saw my doctor, who was very happy with the current weight loss. And my A1C, which is our test of our blood sugar average over about a 90-day period, which should be, I believe the range should be between 4.5 and 6. If you go above that, you're starting to get pre-diabetic and diabetic. And I certainly was many years ago. My A1C, 4.6.
Awesome.
No medication, I'll say too. I haven't been on meds for 8 years. So it can be done. Yeah.
All right. So you're carnivore. You can travel and do carnivore. You and it just seems to work. Give us a typical day while you're traveling. When you eat, how you eat. Do you stay in a dorm type of place? Does it have cooking? How do you do that? Do you have to go shopping for your meat? Tell us about like a typical day on the road.
Oh, that's an excellent question. When I get into each city, I try to make it a point, and actually I do make it a point. I make it a priority to get to a grocery store. And our company offers us 2 hotel options, but 99% of the time I opt to get an Airbnb place because I want a kitchen. I want to be able to cook my food. I want to have a fridge. I want to feel like a human. So that's one way to feel great on the road is having more like a home than a hotel room. And I also, on the other side of it, I like having a washer and a dryer instead of having to go to a laundromat. And, so there's benefits to the Airbnb. Plus, they tend to be less expensive, even with our company rates being pretty good. I tend to save money at the Airbnb or sometimes a VRBO, which is another type of housing. So anyway, I'll run to the grocery store, and it's super easy to shop anymore because it's pretty much going to be steak or ground beef or chicken, or if there's a great looking pork roast or any kind of meat, I'll grab it. I might get some butter, and that might be it. And I tend to fast the whole day until about 5 or 6 in the evening. And then I have my meal. And before I eat, I tend to have just black coffee through the day. And I know that's not technically carnivore, but it's like I've given up so many things in the food world. I think just having some coffee, whether it actually physically is suppressing my appetite, I don't know. I think it does. And so I drink fresh water and coffee through the day. I don't put anything in it because I don't want to technically break the fast. And coffee being 0 calorie, it doesn't break your fast. But it ends up being that I get about a 23-hour fast every day because I just eat the one meal. And I think there is some magic in both choices, the one meal a day and the carnivore thing, because I'm able to go with plenty of energy through the day until I finally do eat. And like I said earlier, I eat really big. I'm not kidding when I say I eat at least a pound of a steak, sometimes a pound and a half, sometimes up to 2 pounds. If I'm really hungry, I mean, I'm a big girl. I'm 5'10", so I'm not a tiny little petite person. And I've always been a big eater. I used to make the wrong choices in food, and now I seem to be making the right choices that work for this body of mine. And then, so I'll have my nice big meal, and I don't trim the fat off the steak or take the skin off the chicken. I eat it all. And I season it with salt, and sometimes I have like a seasoning mix, that I'll, put on there, like a Montreal steak rub or something, just to give it good flavor. And that's kind of my day eating wise. And I have to add in here that recently I got myself a sous vide, which a friend of mine had told me what we have a tiny little private group on Facebook called OMAD Carnivore, which means one meal a day carnivore. And we've kept it small so that we don't get too big, and I want to keep it real personal. Anyway, she had shared that there was a sous vide on sale on Amazon a few weeks ago for half price. And I got one, and I have used it about 3 or 4 times, and boy, does it make a steak good. It's so easy to use. If people that are watching this aren't familiar with them yet, it's an appliance that's probably, I'd say about maybe 1.5 feet long and about as big around as a coffee cup. And you clamp it on to a big pot or a plastic bin, something that will hold water. And the actual instrument itself, which is electric, it circulates water and it heats up the water. And then you put your food in a, either you seal it in like a food saver kind of sealing system, or you can do a Ziploc bag, nothing fancy. And that's what I've done. I started with 2 pork chops that I've gotten at Central Market. This was about a week and a half ago. And I salt and peppered them. They were nice and thick, probably a good inch at least. And I added just some Montreal steak rub to it and put a big blob of butter in there and sealed it up, put both pork chops in 2 separate bags into the sous vide and put it at 134.5. That was the temperature. So I guess that's Fahrenheit. And just put it in the water bath for a couple of hours. And a dear friend of mine who lives here at the house with me, she came home and she had said, well, okay, a pork chop would be fine, but they're always so dry. And my mom used to make them and I never liked them. And I was like, well, let's just see. We don't know what this is going to turn out like. So we got our bags out of the water, all done, opened them up, put them on the plate, and went down and sat down, and we literally had our knife and our fork in our hands and both like cut into it at the same time and put the pork chop bite in our mouth. And she looked at me, put her hand on her chest. She was like, oh, that's so good. And she was right. It turned out as juicy as any pork chop I've ever had in my life. Tender, moist, and something about the sous vide makes all those spices infuse into the meat rather than just sort of sitting on the surface. Oh, what a treat. Since then, I've done some ribeye steaks, which they actually, once you've cooked them in the sous vide for a couple of hours, for me, like I like rare to medium rare. So you do between 120 and 128 degrees for a couple of hours. Then you need to sear it, because a steak looks just sort of gray when it's been in the sous vide, and that's not very appetizing. Plus, I don't know, there's something about that crusty sear. So hot cast iron skillet, sear the bottom of that steak real good, flip it over, drop some butter in there and some fresh rosemary, and then spoon the butter over the steak. Whoa, what a good steak. That I would put that steak in any fine restaurant like Morton's or Ruth's Chris or any of those nice steakhouses that we have chains for. It's good.
It sounds delicious. So would you consider yourself self-taught, or did you go onto YouTube to see how some people do it? Or did you watch Richard's videos, because he's got a sous vide video too, right?
Yes, he does. And I'm definitely a YouTube girl. I check out a lot of recipes and charts and stuff there and online, just to see kind of what temperature should it be if you're going to use the sous vide, because obviously you can dial it into a very specific temperature and it stays exactly at that temperature. So if you did your steak in there at, say, 124 degrees, once it's cooked, it never goes beyond the point of it where it is. Like if you set it to a medium rare temperature, it'll stay medium rare for 6 hours. It's just when you take it out. And I think if the longer you let it sit in there, the softer and more tender it even gets. I found that 2 hours was kind of perfect. And then I have to credit a friend of ours from the little OMAD Carnivore group, Charles. He sent me a recipe book that he and friends have done. And he had a butter ribeye in there as a recipe, and I kind of followed his recipe the first time, and it was A1. It was so good.
So a ribeye wouldn't taste like a pot roast when it was done. It would still taste like the ribeye because you seared it.
Exactly. Now, what I've heard is you can do even large roasts in the sous vide. In fact, I heard Richard Morris of the Two Keto Dudes talking about doing I believe it was a 72-hour beef roast. Can't remember if he said prime rib or if he said a chuck roast, but he seasoned it and then put it in, and I forget the temperature. It's probably on their website. They're very good at documenting things, but sealed it up and left it for 72 hours. And he said you wanted to cry. It was so good. So it's a handy, wonderful tool that I'll take it on the road with me. I'm home in Dallas where my show is right now, and so I'm able to use it and use my own kitchen and everything. But I will take it with me. It probably weighs a couple of pounds maybe, and I'll just stick it in my suitcase and take it with me to the various cities when we start traveling again next week after next.
That was going to be my next question. Is it so good that now you'd have to travel with it?
Yes, definitely. We head up to Oklahoma City after this, and then we head up into the north. We're going to be in some cold climates, and we'll be in Detroit, Milwaukee, Kalamazoo, Pittsburgh, and Providence. And so I'm going to have to get my snow boots out and heavy, heavy, heavy coats. Tell you, the only disadvantage to losing weight is I'm cold. I don't have all that body fat that I used to have that kind of kept me warm in the winter. So I'm going to have to bundle up this year.
And just think how excited all these people will be to have some fun entertainment in the middle of the cold, dark winter.
I hope so. It's always lovely to bring, a show to a city and, get to meet some of the audience every now and then. A lot of times the audience will come to the stage door and talk to the actors. And, I love seeing, the people and knowing that you've probably brought a little joy to them, and you might have even inspired them to do whatever they do even a little better than before they saw the show. Oops, I hope you can still see me.
I can.
Okay, there we go. My screen went to sleep, but I've got her back on here.
Right, yeah. So, thanks for sharing what like a typical day is for you. Yeah. Now, all the people that you travel with, because you end up being kind of like a family.
Yes, we do.
is the keto or the carnivore contagious?
A little. I've got some friends in my company that are diabetic, and I try to be very vocal on Facebook about how good it's been for me and how it's benefited my disease, which frankly I feel is in a way has been sort of a life-saving thing to actually be diagnosed. I know that sounds crazy, but I get people asking questions about it at work and of course through Facebook, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me, you know, with private messages, and Facebook's a really great medium for me being a traveler, because it allows me to be in touch with friends at home and family and people from literally all over the world that I've met in various capacities. And I've found myself answering the same questions many times, which I'm happy to do because, you know, it took me years to find this. It took me years of doing this to get to where I am. And I've found wonderful resources, people that are authors, people that are doctors, nurses, nutritionists, fitness people. And I found myself answering the same questions. And so I thought, you know what I should do? I should put together a list. And so I've made a note that I can share with people if they're curious, that I'm not selling anything. I'm not selling any of this information. I'm just sharing it with people because I know there's a lot of info online that gets confusing, because some of it's good, some of it's not the proper information for keto. And I think people get lost in the volume of info. And so I've put together this list of what I think is actually effective, people that I truly believe have our best interests at heart, who are leaders in the low carb and keto community. And now, you know, carnivore is sort of picking up as a thing that people are trying and finding that it works for them very well. So I'm adding, you know, in carnivore. So I've got this nice long list that I'm able to email or text to people. And I've probably shared it 20 times in the past couple of weeks just because people are curious. And I am so happy to pass along the good info.
Oh, that's a really nice and generous thing. And could they contact you through that? Oh, you don't want that group to get big though. So
no, but they could friend me on Facebook if they can find me. We've become friends and they could probably find me through you, and I'm happy to share it with you. So if you want to share it with other people, feel free. There's no like copyright or anything. This is just sharing great books and videos and podcasts. And then kind of my basics on what worked for me. You know, it's like how to start, because some people, they just get so lost they can't even get to the start line. And I know in the years leading up to this, every diet seemed the hardest right at the beginning. And once you get into it and start, and once, especially with keto, if you get over your sugar withdrawals, it's so much easier to stick with it. And if you've got some good resources to kind of feed your mind, I think you're doing well. And I think maybe that's maybe my biggest key to why this has worked is I didn't just, you know, all of a sudden hit the gym and start eating different. I actually fed my mind. I read books, I read websites, I read blogs, I listened to podcasts, a lot of podcasts. Like, I just kept the information coming in, and I still do, you know, I still listen to lots of podcasts, and it just keeps me fresh. It keeps me engaged. I think, you know, I've personally had issue with some of these TV shows that are geared towards a competitive weight loss. And I don't think they're teaching people how to feed their brain. I think they're just making them throw themselves into like an insane amount of exercise and deprivation sort of eating. That ain't for me. That is not for me at all.
It's scary to see. And then when they did that thing where they said that all those people, the biggest losers, all regained their weight. It was just so sad. But you know, we
It
can't
is sad.
criticize ourselves skinny.
I agree. In fact, I really do believe there's a lot of truth to that. Changing our bodies is 95% food and 5% movement. Exercise has a huge value in so many ways, but you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. I've tried. It didn't work for me. And if it works for somebody else, well, I'm proud of you, but it didn't work for me. It really required seriously changing my food and understanding my disease. And like I said a few minutes ago, I really do, in a way, think type 2 diabetes has sort of been a blessing for me, because it's been like a monkey on my back. And I could either have chosen to keep taking medications, and I could have continued to gain weight, which, you know, when I watch some of those TV shows like My 600-Pound Life, and before I found low carb and keto, I saw myself going that direction. 272 pounds is a lot, but I could have been 400, 500 pounds easy, because I was never full. I was hungry all the time. I would eat huge amounts of food, which were high carb, and I would be hungry an hour later. And I didn't understand it. And it was maddening. Like, I'm not kidding. I felt like I was going insane. I'm like, there is no way I just ate a football size worth of food. I can't physically have an empty stomach. I cannot be hungry. But yet I was. My brain, all of it was. And I finally learned, you know, especially I have to give Gary Taubes some credit. That book called Why We Get Fat was pivotal for me. And him describing what's going on when we eat, how if we eat all these high carbohydrate foods, that our blood sugar shoots way up, and then our pancreas tries to throw out enough insulin to handle all that sugar, and it simply can't keep up with the volume of carbohydrates that we eat. And so we end up high sugar, high insulin, try to get the sugar down. The sugar starts to go down some, and our brain goes, whoa, that sugar was amazing. I want more. That's hunger. That was those crazy hunger signals. Even though I technically wasn't empty of food, my brain was telling me I was hungry. And when I finally made that connection in there, that I was jacking all these levels up in my body, up and down, and going through all these crazy food crazies. And I went, well, if I don't eat the sugar to begin with, the high carbs, then I don't get this big spike. I don't get the big insulin surge. And then my brain is okay. And that's where my shift started happening. And it took away years of feeling guilty about food. And I realized that there was just science saying, this is why you're hungry. This is why you're eating so much, and you're triggering an addictive part of your brain. And if you don't eat all that stuff, and if you find a better food source like meat, like things that don't require a big insulin response, you know, if you can tolerate vegetables that are low carb, great. Put some fat with it. And then like all those cravings just sort of die down. Now, I know that if I were to change back to high carb eating and stuff, my brain would fire up like the 4th of July and say, you want more, you want more. Because I know that will happen, but I don't see me ever going back to that old way. I really don't. Not after an 8-year process. And I've never stuck with anything this long, ever. And I guess a big reason beyond having the success with my A1C and my diabetes being in check with the meds and all that is that I get to eat delicious food. That I do not feel deprived. I do not feel rebellious. I'm happy. And I've managed to find a wonderful community of people that also do this and understand. And I don't feel alone in this. I know it's a different way to think about food, but because of the community of people, I'm able to stick with this.
I love that. And, I feel that all of our journeys, especially when you've even transitioned from keto to carnivore, the self-knowledge that you've been given as a gift for all of this, Elaine, is so amazing because, you just never stop learning. And I talk about 2 non-scale victories with your A1C and your diabetes. What is and what was, because you're a female, it's kind of in our DNA. What was your relationship with the scale?
Um, I avoided it mostly. I just, before I found any of this, I didn't like to weigh. I knew I was big. I kept buying clothes that were bigger and bigger and uglier, frankly, because I'm sorry, they just don't make beautiful things for very large women. And being 5'10" and 272 pounds, I realized that I weighed more than most professional football players. And I'm not unusual. Many of us have done that, have been there. And so I just avoided the scale mostly. I've gone through various uses of the scale since I have been on this journey the past 8 years. Sometimes I weigh daily, and I use a digital scale. I actually travel a little cheap digital Walmart scale, and I think it was like $25, and it's very light, and it allows me to see what my weight is to like point. I think it's like every 0.2%, so I could see that I might be 167.2, so it's very specific. And then sometimes I go weeks without using it. And I'm kind of at that place now where my body is almost at goal weight. And I realize that it's going to probably take a while to get maybe the last 15 pounds off. And frankly, I don't know what I should weigh at this weight. I am technically I'm not obese anymore, according to my BMI, which is the first time in my entire adult life. My BMI, I think, was 24% body fat, where it used to be, I think, around 38% or maybe even higher. So I will continue to use the scale as just a way to keep myself honest with myself. I did find when I started Carnivore on June 1st, that I weighed every day, and I kept a spreadsheet, just to kind of see. And I watched the weight just start to fall off, and it was pretty consistent, that I would lose at least 7 pounds a month. And I'll take it, anything that kind of slides me down, that is great. Now, my body type, I guess I'm a little smaller frame than I thought I was, but I'm still tall. I'm 5'10", and I tend to carry the majority of my weight in my tummy, and I still have a tummy, and that's what tells me I think I need to lose another 15 or 17 pounds. And so I'll continue to travel with that little Walmart scale with me, and just check in, and I'll keep my spreadsheet going, and I try to track, but not obsessively. So, pretty often.
You just looking at your beautiful face and your mannerisms and everything, I see pure joy.
Aww.
And you probably feel so connected, not only to yourself, but the keto community. I mean, I couldn't do this without, or carnivore community. I couldn't do this without the subbies that I have, and the podcast and everything else.
Yes.
You're that way too. Who do you drop everything to listen to with a new YouTube drop? Who would you want to be alone so you could hear what they had to say?
It varies. There's a lot of people in our community that are just awesome. And I guess usually what I'm looking for is maybe like a specific question, that might be something that might have come up. So, I'll just search on YouTube. And of course, YouTube is really great about offering suggestions, you know, because of your history. But it'll vary. Sometimes I'll watch something that Dr. Barry has said, because he'll do a video every now and then. Even Joe Rogan has some interesting interviews that he's done. I've being new friends with you, I've watched a little of your work, which is wonderful. Golly, I like to watch some of the recipes. I like to see people cooking and see how they do something in the low carb and keto and of course meat. One of the most profound videos I saw in the past couple of months came as a recommendation from a friend. And some of this was very personal to me, and some was personal because of friends' struggles. But it was an interview that Joe Rogan did with Dr. Jordan B. Peterson about carnivore. And that was what intrigued me, was, you know, him talking about carnivore. Well, it's about a 28-minute video where Dr. Peterson talks about his daughter and himself. His daughter started doing a carnivore eating plan because she had read some things. She's even at a very young age, she had, I believe it was a joint condition, whether it was technically arthritis, I'm not sure, but she had a lot of joint pain, so much that she's had to have several joints replaced at 15 years old, and has dealt with a severe amount of depression, as he says he has himself. He said, and Joe asked him, how did the depression manifest? And Dr. Peterson said, well, I can tell you, the feeling is, if you had your favorite dog and it died, that's the feeling of depression every single day. And he said, I've lived with it my entire life. So has my daughter. And he said within days of changing his food, the depression lifted. And for her, the joint pain went away. And this video I've shared with a number of people because I think there's something to be said about how our food sources affect not only our weight, but even our brain and our entire, you know, body system. And so those are some of the resources I've watched. A number of the seminars that the various keto conventions post online. There's so many wonderful speakers out there, and Amber O'Hearn is a really great one if you're interested in carnivore. She's done a number of wonderful carnivore videos and her experience with it, and she's one of our longest, like, out there, you know, putting herself out there, people that have done carnivore. She was doing this way before it was cool. So I appreciate anybody that takes time to talk about it and share it with people, because it really is, it is the community. It is getting the info out there and letting people know that are curious and, you know, want to try it. You really never know who you might affect in a positive way when you talk about it. And that's part of why I try to share my info on Facebook, and just, you know, I just try to do it in a way. I don't want to feel like I'm bragging about my success. It's not that. It's that if I, who was most definitely a carb addict and who struggled with weight and, you know, being 272 pounds, if with all the diets that I've tried over the years, and I've tried many, from that awful MetaFast thing that Oprah Winfrey did, to Weight Watchers, to Nutrisystem, to reading diet books and trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing till I couldn't trust myself anymore. If I can find success doing this and I can stick with it, and then I really do believe anybody could do it. And then that's what's important to me, is just being able to share that info so that I can, you know, people can find a way out of the prison that they've created of their bodies, because you really do get imprisoned in your fat, and you become withdrawn, and you tend to isolate. And I don't want to live the rest of my life doing that. I want to be out there. I want to meet people. I want to, you know, offer what I if they want to hear it.
I have a little clan of carnivores my on my channel, and one of them, of course, is Mike KetOMAD, who's, this is why I'm doing this. And
Excellent.
I find that, like you were saying, the give back in the carnivore world is so tremendous. It's like there is so much gratitude with carnivores, and they are so willing to share their struggles and their successes. And it, like, just like what you said, it's not in a bragging way. It's just in such a gift. And I'm so glad I was able to get it. It just always warms my heart. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear the generosity of keto people. But when they segue into carnivore, it's like a friend for life. You couldn't lose them. They're so generous with their time and their effort. And I sense that you've got, a great following. You don't have a channel, right? You don't do videos, do you?
I haven't yet. I probably will at some point, because I feel like I've got a lot to share with people that I'd love to, impart what I've dug up over the years and how it's impacted and helped me. And I will say that I've read a number of books over the years, and I've really appreciated, what our authors have done and in sharing the science of all this. And, there's many books on recipes, and there's many books that really kind of delve into the physics of what's happening with our bodies. And what I've thought so far that I haven't found too much of is people telling their personal stories in a book about it. And so I've begun to write my personal story, and I haven't found a name for the book yet, but I'm trying to write a little bit here and there when I can. And hopefully maybe within the year 2019, I could get the majority of it written, and maybe reach out to some of my friends who have published, because I'm good friends with Maria Emmerich and Carolyn Ketchum and Jimmy Moore and Dr. Westman and a number of people who've published wonderful books, and Dr. Barry, and maybe find a source to get the personal story out there that maybe somebody just needs to hear that it can be done, and see a before and after picture, which I'm happy to share. That I've got a before and after that a friend of mine kind of put together, and it's telling, because you see me in this when I was 272 pounds versus where I am about right now, and it's almost a different person completely. I've pretty much lost a whole ballerina dancer.
Oh my goodness, this has been so great. And I think you have so much to offer women, especially through that change of life that they used to call it. I think that you could probably do a whole chapter on your experience with that, because I firmly believe that keto, yes, but definitely carnivore. I bet symptomatically you have lessened some of that.
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
They don't warn us about, do they?
They don't. And I've pretty much sailed into menopause without issue. Every once in a blue moon, my forearm will get a little sweaty, and I think, oh, is that a hot flash? I don't know.
That's
but
wonderful.
It so far hasn't been bad. It really hasn't. So yeah, maybe there's something really good going on there.
I totally believe it. Well, I think that we've kind of come to the end of this first interview anyway, but I definitely, hope to see you and hear from you on my channel, as well as Richard's, because that's where I was finding out things about you. But you've been a delight. And, I think that so many of us initially, especially women in keto, like I have a lot of older women that subscribe, and they, it just, I am so delighted when a carnivore woman comes along. Kind of like, I just want to pick your brain. And because I think the perception at first is like it's a manly thing,
Yeah,
you eat, slabs of raw meat and growl if anybody comes near you. And it's so wonderful to see a totally beautiful feminine, woman doing it, right? And that's what you are. I mean, as soon as I saw your picture, I said, first of all, you're not your age, but at the beginning. but I think you have so much to offer, and I'm so
Thank
glad.
you.
I'm so glad that Richard posted that and that you came along, Elaine. Really.
Me too. Richard is a wonderful soul, and I really support what he's doing, passing along great information. He's doing a ton of videos, you know, talking about his experiences, and he's also cooking and showing people how to cook and how to go grocery shopping. And he's just got a real good heart, and that is a good man doing some good stuff.
Yeah, he's offered a lot. His channel is great. I made his prime rib second time. I did it at Thanksgiving, and I did it a couple of days ago at Christmas.
Ooh, yum.
Oh, I ate it all. It was so good. But what we're going to do now is we're going to say our goodbyes to the recording.
Okay.
We'll kind of say goodbye personally. So, Elaine, thank you so much. I'll put some links down below, and it's just been so wonderful, and I'm so glad that we get to bring you to Mike's WOBO week of beef
Yes.
of the week, and I'm sure this isn't the last we've heard from you.
Oh, well, thank you, Sarah, for the time. You've made me feel very comfortable, and this was fun. I would love to come back and chat with you and your followers anytime.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.